Hello and welcome. You're watching News9. I'm Shweta Kothari. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. First up, days after scrapping 2,000 rupee note, RBI issues FAQs as banks gear up to exchange process that starts today. Meanwhile, most markets, petrol pumps, including food delivery app Zomato, reports a surge in cash transactions from people trying to spend the currency that they have. Now, after NCLAT upheld NCLT orders allowing Go First voluntary insolvency proceedings, lessors are scrambling for options. We will explore those options in the bulletin today. And also remember, Jet Airways NCLAT order is expected on 30th of May. May bring relief, may not. We will explore that as well. Now, Tax Department has also issued guidelines on how to compute taxes for online gaming, what it means for gamers and for platforms that support gaming. All that and more on this bulletin. Joining me at this point in time, my colleague Karthik Malhotra. Karthik, good morning.
Hi Shweta, good morning.
Good to see you once again.
Likewise.
And it's the start of the day where 2,000 rupee note is going to be exchanged. We've been talking about this and we're hoping to get some visuals very soon on how people are queuing up, if at all. But banks, of course, gearing up, and RBI has also released a list of questions and answers, do's and don'ts.
Absolutely, Shweta. So 23rd May is here, and this window is open till 30th of September. And during this period of about 3.5 months or so, anybody could go over to banks and exchange the 2,000 rupee notes for an equal denomination in smaller currency notes. Right now, of course, 500 rupee notes are going to be the highest exchange denomination. Now, there are certain guidelines issued by the Reserve Bank of India, and in fact Shaktikanta Das, the governor, came on record yesterday in an interaction with media professionals and journalists and stated certain measures which are being put in place. To begin with, as has been the case up until now, any deposit into a bank account exceeding 50,000 rupees, so 50,000 rupees or more being deposited into a bank account requires a PAN card. So there is no change to that rule whatsoever. Okay. You need a PAN card if you're depositing 50,000 rupees or more in your bank account or any other bank account for that matter.
But you can't deposit in this case more than 20,000?
You can deposit, but in one transaction, no. So you can exchange up to 20,000 rupees. Deposits can be higher than 20,000 also. Okay. Now, in the case of exchange, up to 20,000 rupees, which means 10 notes, these pink colored beautiful 2,000 rupee notes, 10 of these can be exchanged without any documentation whatsoever. So you don't need your PAN card, you don't need your Aadhaar, you don't even need to fill in any slips, any forms, nothing. Walk into a bank account with a wad of these 10 notes, pink color, 20,000 rupees worth of value, exchange it for a smaller denomination without any paperwork at all, right? Now, in addition to that, the RBI governor also alluded to a potential revision in the deadline of 30th September. Now, it's unlikely that the deadline will be advanced, but he did hint upon the fact that closer to 30th of September, the RBI may decide to give an extension to this deadline by hopefully looking at the number of currency notes that have come back. Now, remember, 3.62 lakh crore rupees in 2,000 rupee notes is in circulation at the moment, and from today until 30th of September, all of these currency notes or most of these currency notes are expected to make it back into the coffers of the RBI. Now, this deadline has been set according to Shaktikanta Das so that people take the deadline seriously, and it's not an indefinite deadline that, you know, we may do it, we will do it at a certain point. The deadline has been set so that the target is that by 30th of September, most of the currency notes should come back. In case they don't, the RBI may consider extending the deadline as well. In addition to that, I think it's important for all our viewers to know that until 30th of September, 2,000 rupee notes are legal tender, which means you have every right to go and spend these 2,000 rupee notes in the market if you intend not exchanging them for another lower denomination. Now, this has obviously seen a massive splurge in cash being king again. So we reported this yesterday.
Absolutely. I'm going to come to you on that in just a bit, because that's interesting, because everybody is now reporting more cash transaction, including Zomato that came on record.
Absolutely right.
And that's very interesting, because people are of course looking to dispense whatever 2,000 rupee cash they have. In fact, very interestingly, I got a few calls from people around me asking, and that basically goes on to tell you why and how there's not enough literacy around this. While there is panic, not a lot of people know that it's still a legal tender. You can still go and exchange the currency. People should not refuse accepting the note, which in this case many people are doing, many shopkeepers are doing, and that in a sense leads to a lot of panic. Are we going to see you queuing up at a bank today?
Thankfully, Shweta, I have no 2,000 rupee currency notes. It also talks about my state of affairs financially. But that was standing. In fact, on Friday, you and I were together in the studio along with Rakesh. And when I went home, and even the next morning, my wife and I and my parents, we sort of, checked all our drawers, all our wallets, any place where there is a possibility of holding some cash. We had no cash whatsoever. So it's
It's a good
thing. It's a good thing. And honestly, my wallet has become much lighter because I stopped carrying plastic also. And UPI does the job pretty much everywhere. Anytime you need to make any sort of transaction, UPI does the job for you.
Right.
Any large value transactions, net banking is a great alternative. So I'm always short of currency notes, and my wallet has thinned down because I stopped using plastic as well.
I think all in all, I think it's a good thing, because it tells you how we are moving towards, and very fast, moving towards a very digitized economy where everybody, and I think that is the vision here per se, where everybody from a very small rickshaw puller to a vegetable vendor, everybody is a part of that digitization process.
Very true.
Where many may not agree with the way it's being done, and we've had dissenting voices. In fact, a very interesting dissenting voice is coming also from some BJP workers who went to court saying that we want people to furnish their proof, we want people to furnish their IDs when they're depositing. And that's an interesting point, because RBI has made it very clear that you do not need to show your ID, and that has resulted in a lot of gossips around what exactly was the need for it.
Absolutely. So, Shweta, RBI has specified that deposits of 50,000 and more will still require a PAN card. Specifically on the point of no documentation or filling of slips, that is something that SBI has come on record and stated, right?
And RBI in fact too has said that you don't need any sort of proof or document in case you're exchanging.
Among private banks and many other banks and bankers is that if they continue to receive these currency notes with no documentation, and in the absence of a written stated order by RBI that no documentation is required, there could be a case built against banks and bank employees, and there could be cases of harassment where the tax authorities or the Directorate of Enforcement or even RBI officials may end up questioning banks at a later stage. So that fear is there among some of the private sector banks, definitely. SBI has categorically stated that, and State Bank of India being the largest lender in the country and the largest bank by number of subscribers and number of depositors and account holders, that it will not take any documentation, right? But there is fear among other banks that at a later stage they could be subjected to some sort of scrutiny, and hence they may go ahead and take a photocopy of the PAN or Aadhaar or get a form filled in any case, right? So starting today, I think the pattern will emerge. We will get to understand which are the banks which are entertaining no paperwork and welcoming depositors and exchangers in that sense with open arms and serving a glass of water, as has also been requested by the governor. And hopefully, because of the long time duration of exchange, queues are not going to be as long as one would have expected had the runway been shorter. But what paperwork which bank eventually asks for, we will get to know over the next couple of days or so. But SBI clearly has stated that no paperwork is required whatsoever.
Okay. My colleague Amit is going to, our colleague Amit is going to join us very, very shortly. He's standing outside a bank to give us a status check of how it's looking like, because this is the first day since banks have opened, and people, of course, we are hoping will not queue up. it's going to be relatively silent. But before we get him, and we're trying to patch him through, important FAQs that RBI has listed for people who are watching us at this point in time. I think let's take some of these pointers one after the other. How and where to exchange 2000 rupee note. And this is important. Do I have to go to my bank to exchange these notes, or I can go to any bank?
If you're depositing money in your bank account, you've got to go to your bank, not necessarily your branch, but the brand of your bank and any branch of your bank. If you're only exchanging currency notes, my understanding looking at the FAQ is that you can walk into any bank and you can exchange it for a currency note of a smaller denomination.
Right. And you know, another interesting thing that people have been asking, whether there's going to be any deduction, whether you are going to exchange all of your money. For example, if I give 20,000, do I get 20,000 in other denominations? Or whether there's going to be a fee that will be charged?
No, there's no fee that will be charged, and you get the exact value of what you give, you get back.
Exactly.
But the grey market is also fairly, fairly frivolous and innovative in the same breath, because a lot of people going to Kirana stores or going to nearby mom and pop stores in a bid to exchange currency notes, until today when banks have actually opened, they are getting fleeced. So they give a 2000 rupee pink note and they get 3 instead of 4 grey colored 500 rupee notes back. So these grey market practices obviously need to come to an end, and hopefully they will come to an end today as banks open up their exchange window.
Right, and so those are of course the FAQs in general that you need to know in order to exchange money that you're hoarding. I hope nobody is hoarding that much money, but whatever you have.
There are 2 questions which continue to remain unanswered to my mind.
Let's come to that, yes.
So number 1, there is still no clarity on whether these 2000 rupees will continue to be legal tender after 30th September or not. Right. So that comes to a very critical option that, if RBI decides not to extend the 30th September deadline, then if I'm holding on to these 2000 rupee notes, can I still use them in retail or not? Now the point is, if I can use them and if they continue to be legal tender even after the 30th of September, then what is the need to exchange them at all? So this is one question that needs answering. And I think, it's a fair question simply because I need clarity on whether this currency is going to be valid after 30th September at all or not, with the assumption that the deadline stays.
Right.
Right. Second point being, what is going to be the highest denomination in paper currency going forward? 500 rupee notes, of course, in the absence or in the situation where withdrawal of 2000 rupee notes is happening, of course, we know 500 rupee notes are the highest denomination. But later on, are we going to see printing of 1000 rupee notes? RBI Governor yesterday very clearly mentioned this is all in the realm of speculation. But these are still questions that will need answering, if not now, then at some point up until 30th of September. So are 1000 rupee notes going to make a comeback, or is there going to be a facelift to the 2000 rupee notes, or are we going to see a much higher denomination like a 5000 or a 10,000 rupee note? So we don't know that as yet.
And those are big mysteries. Are we going to see a larger denomination, a bigger denomination note like a 5000? We don't know whether 1000 note will make a comeback. We don't know, but those of course are questions that remain unanswered. Amit is joining us from outside a bank. Amit, good morning. How's it looking like around you?
Good morning, Shweta. I am in front of Kotak Mahindra Bank here, and I have gone inside, and there is no rush whatsoever. That is unusual. There are few people as usual. There is HDFC Bank close by. I have gone there also, and there is no unprecedented sort of rush whatsoever. So I don't see any frenzy or anything in people coming to convert currency notes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, absolutely. Have you been able to speak to someone who's come into the bank so far? What are they feeling? Is there a general sense of calm? What are they feeling like? Have you been able to speak to someone?
The bank I'm standing in front of, I went inside. Of course, I can't put the camera in there. There are exactly, I counted 3 people who had come in the morning right now.
Okay.
So there was, and I don't think so they had come for exchanging currency notes.
All right.
So I even had, before this I had walked on to HDFC Bank, which is close by here. No unprecedented rush whatsoever over there either. Maybe later in the day, I do not know, but not right now.
Okay, so Amit, since you seem to be in Sector 18, I know that market fairly well, pretty much like the back of my hand. Since you're at Sector 18, just walk down the Kotak Mahindra Bank lane, and there are a couple of jewelry stores there as well. Why not go inside and take a sneak peek into what kind of exchange, what kind of transactions are taking place? We'll give you time to do that, and we'll connect back with you. But I think it'll be interesting to see if if people are flocking into jewelry stores instead of banks. And why do any paperwork documentation come in any scanners at all? Go ahead and use the cash and hold a hold a more valuable object than a pink colored note.
That brings us to our second part of the discussion, which is what are the venues where you can, or rather avenues where you can spend your 2000 rupee note in case you have it. And one way that people are doing it, and a lot of markets are reporting a lot of rush because people are hoping to dispense off their cash. Also, Zomato yesterday said that more and more transactions are now happening in cash, Karthik.
72%. In fact, on Twitter, it said 72% of its transactions were cash on delivery, and a bulk of those were 2000 rupee notes. But see, avenues continue to be aplenty. As long as it is legal tender, you and I, if we have the 2000 rupee note, I don't, you perhaps would.
Not at all,
you don't. Okay, but avenues are aplenty, and legally, no kirana store or no retail outlet or no avenue where you transact using any monetary form can refuse accepting the 2000 rupee note. But 2000 rupee note is high value, and people who have a lot of those are finding some solace in 2-3 very specific sectors. One, of course, being jewelry, gold and silver, precious metal, precious gems, rare gems. These are obviously, like we had seen even after demonetization of 2016, people who held on to their demonetized cash at that time found some solace in in the neighborhood friendly jewelers, and they went ahead and they exchanged their notes. So yeah, so jewelry both in the formal and informal space is seeing some offtake, greater than usual offtake, with cash being king again. In addition to that, of course, we are looking at petrol pumps where people want to get their tanks filled with petrol or diesel using cash instead of card or UPI. Online food ordering, you mentioned Zomato, so yeah, that is true, but there are also reports published where other e-commerce players, in addition to Zomato or just food delivery, other e-commerce players are also seeing and are expected to continue seeing a greater uptake in cash on delivery options. And the expectation is that once these parcels get delivered at home on a COD, the note that is likely to come out to make the payment is likely to be a pink color 2000 rupee note. So cash on delivery on e-commerce is, of course, one chunk, and I think we had this on our show yesterday as well, and this is something that has now been corroborated in other reports and other agencies filing these reports as well, that white goods, consumer durables, refrigerators, air conditioners alike, these again, televisions, these are again high value purchases, involve buying, and it's easy to sort of get cash discounts and get these objects picked up from a store nearby. So these are some sectors which are seeing a fairly robust demand and are likely to see a continued robust demand using cash as the denominator going forward.
So while there are sectors that are going to see more cash inflows, there are also sectors that will see cash crunch.
That's right.
And I'm assuming from my experience of 2016, realty is going to be one of them.
That's right. So realty definitely could be one casualty, and linked to that, of course, is construction, renovation, home improvement. These are categories where the labor is usually paid in cash, and if this cash is sucked out of the market, sucked out of the economy, making these payments, especially to the labor class, which despite Jan Dhan and despite the best efforts of the government and the digitization, may not have bank accounts, may not be willing to accept a UPI based transaction. Also because quite often their bank account is linked to a phone number which has changed over time, and hence transactions get blocked, or their bank account is registered to an address in their hometowns, in their villages, and KYC has not been updated, and frequent changes of mobile phones, mobile numbers, largely because of lower education. These become challenges for the labor class, and hence making payments to them in any digital form becomes difficult. And of course, genuine tax-paying citizens will not want to continue holding on to the cash, so they will go and they will deposit or exchange their cash for lower denomination. If that happens to be the case, lower denomination notes of course can make it back to the laborers, but if they're depositing the cash at home back in their bank accounts, then these sectors could take a hit. And somebody I was speaking to, interestingly, an architect friend of mine, also said that hardware stores where you pick up, again this is linked to home furnishing, home improvement, etc., but hardware stores still continue to be very cash based. And that is one more sector which could take some sort of a hit.
Okay. My assumption is, because many, and this is purely with the way it works in your day-to-day transactions, and that is when you go to a shopkeeper, a small shopkeeper may not be very confident of a couple of notes of cash of 2,000 rupees, and they make up for the bulk of the money that you get through the year or through the month.
True.
So in that case, it's going to be extremely very difficult for people who are not formally a part of economy, not formally a part of banking structure, to be able to find some sort of, you know, consolence in what is going to happen. But of course, the move is going to happen over a span of 3 to 4 months, so they have enough time, and I think the government has enough time to clarify. Do's and don'ts have now come out, but we'll have to see and wait and watch out for the repercussions of the move, and we will keep tracking that story. But
let's see if Amit has happened to get to a jewelry store anywhere near
do we have Amit at a jewelry store? He is walking down to a jewelry store as we speak. We will try to, of course, get him back, because that's the most important story of the day. The 2,000 rupee note that was in a sense demonetized, withdrawn from circulation. The exchange process starts today. We will keep tracking the developments regarding the 2,000 rupee note throughout the day today. But moving on to a very important story that we broke
Shweta,
yesterday.
before we move on to that, you know, I just want to, for the sake of our viewers, and hopefully until Amit also reaches there. Amit, we'll just come back to you in a second, but I think it's also important to highlight specifically what the RBI Governor Mr. Shaktikanta Das said yesterday, and there are 4 salient features which I think are important in the larger context of the economy. Number one, he has said that this withdrawal is unlikely to have a very adverse impact on the economy. So I think all fears around the economic impact by way of withdrawal of 2,000 rupee notes, he has sort of, you know, put a rest and put a sort of, you know, very clean sort of full stop to it, that there is unlikely to be an adverse impact on the economy. He's also come on record and stated that there is no shortage whatsoever of lower denomination currency notes, and there is absolutely no way that you would go to a bank and the bank would fall short of the currency notes in exchange of the 2,000 rupee note. Number 3, he has asked banks to ensure a smooth exchange process, no hassles, no harassment to people coming in to exchange the notes. And of course, we were joking about it, but I think a valid point that a glass of water being made available in the scorching heat, especially in North India right now. You and I sitting in Delhi NCR, temperature touching 46.2 degrees in some parts of the city yesterday, expected to be above 45 degrees Celsius today as well. So I think an important factor there that, yeah, you've traveled to a bank and you're standing in a queue. Thankfully, Amit saw only 3 people, but these queues could eventually get longer. And you don't want a situation like dehydration or, you know,
and we don't want the 2016 to repeat as well, because we saw pictures of, you know, men and women literally fainting in the long queues that were formed, people crying on streets because they lost a spot in the queue because they moved out for some reason. So, I mean, those pictures were harrowing, and I don't think the government wants to see that repeating. We don't want to see that repeating as well.
And I think in addition to that, one last 4th point being that the reason behind this entire exercise has been to ensure clean money in the economy, and by clean, physically clean currency notes. Not as much about black money this time around, at least that is not what has been stated on record. And despite all the political noise around it, the RBI governor has stayed clear of any political sort of interference mentioning any political interference in this particular decision of the RBI, and has come onto record to say that it is the clean currency notes that need to be in circulation. So soiled currency notes, torn currency notes, or sort of disfigured currency notes need to be evicted out of the market, and hence regenerate the same value with cleaner, crisper, sharper, newer notes.
Okay. Amit is standing outside a jewelry shop to give us a sense of how it's working there. Amit, is the crowd there as against what we saw in outside banks? Are people queuing up to buy more jewelry? Because jewelers are reporting, you know, more customer inquiries. They're reporting more people coming in with cash to dispose of and buy precious metal.
Is that for me?
That is correct. It is for you, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I am in front of Tribhuvandas Bhimji Zaveri here. The jewelry shops have not opened as yet, but I spoke to some of the employees here, and they told me the same thing what I saw in the banks, that there is no unprecedented rush over here to basically do away with the 2,000 rupee notes in exchange for jewelry or anything.
Okay.
So that has not happened. So because they are not opened, I have not gotten the big people on camera. But I spoke to some of the employees who have come in early, and they said there has not been any unprecedented basically rush over here to exchange notes, even in these stores.
So that's good news. There isn't too much black money that people want to get rid of. But Amit, thanks for joining us, and hop across to the next possible bank, have a glass of water in the in the heat that you're standing in outside Sector 18, and we'll see you in office soon.
Amit, appreciate you taking time out. We're going to move on now. After NCLAT upheld NCLT order allowing Go First's voluntary insolvency proceedings, lessors are now scrambling. They're scrambling for options. This is something that we've been keeping a close watch on. We broke that story last evening. But now that lessors don't have many options, they have been advised by NCLAT to go back to NCLT. That, of course, is one of the options they have, Karthik.
That's right, Shweta. So let's look at this in context and what really happened. Now, if you look at the timeline, Go First had faulty Pratt & Whitney engines. Go First, despite apparently its best efforts, could not get those engines replaced or rectified. Many people said that their contracting was weak and hence they didn't have the right negotiating power given their overall fleet size, etc. But all that aside, Go First had faulty engines. Pratt & Whitney was the supplier of those faulty engines, could not maintain those engines. 50% of the Go First fleet was grounded. Fewer aircrafts in the skies, obviously lesser financial incentive for the airline, and in fact the airline also said that it is going through a financial crunch, a financial crisis, and before it sort of exploded way out of proportion, it decided to voluntarily plea itself in the insolvency court. So it went to NCLT and filed an application for insolvency. After about a week of evaluation, NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, accepted Go First plea and inducted it into insolvency. The interim resolution professional got appointed to take interim charge of operations at the company. As of this moment, all Go First fleet has been grounded. Go First is not in the skies. Now, what does this do? There are aircraft available at the disposal of Go First, which are not owned by Go First. These are owned by lessors. These are leasing companies who purchase aircraft from the only two aviation big companies, Boeing and Airbus respectively. But in this case, Airbus A320 aircraft were purchased by multiple leasing corporations, 4 of them in fact, and were leased like other aviation companies, like other airlines, to Go First as well. So these aircraft belong to the lessors. The lessors lease these out to an airline, and the airline pays a rent on these aircraft. Right now, since the aircraft are all grounded and since Go First has gone into insolvency proceedings, it is neither paying rent to the lessors to use these aircraft, and even the lessors cannot take their aircraft back and deploy them somewhere else where they can get some yield on their investments. So the lessors decided to appeal against the NCLT order and went to the appeals court, NCLAT. Now, NCLAT yesterday upheld the NCLT order and said that it will not do anything to undo the ruling given by NCLT for the lessors to get their aircraft back, and in case there is any negotiation or any reconsideration that needs to be made, it will be made by NCLT. So, in short, the lessors can go back to NCLT, put in a request, put in a plea and ask for the aircraft back. Now, my assumption here would be that they would want only the serviceable aircraft back and not the ones which are grounded because of faulty engines, because how do you redeploy them, or how do you even fly them out of the shores of India or out of wherever they are parked in their parking bays. But the only recourse available now is, of course, go back to NCLT, request, plea to reconsider and get the aircraft back, which seems unlikely because NCLT is the agency which has the court which has admitted the insolvency plea. Or option 2 is that the lessors can go to Supreme Court and ask them to intervene in the NCLAT order of upholding the NCLT recommendation. But in all of this, the only sort of, if you can call it a victory of sorts, but the only hopeful candidate here happens to be Go First itself.
Right.
And the fact that lessors cannot take the aircraft back means that Go First could take back to the skies with a serviceable fleet of aircraft as scheduled, reported in some cases end of this month or early next month. But as soon as the IRP has come up with a plan of action and as long as, as soon as the proceedings move in a positive direction, operationally nothing could stop Go First from taking to the skies again, because they will continue to take charge and keep charge of the aircraft with them.
I want to quickly run our audience through some of the misgivings of lessors and the problems that they have raised, the questions that they have raised with respect to the insolvency process. And they said, and I quote, that they were not properly heard by NCLT when Go First registered its insolvency plea, the voluntary insolvency plea, which means that their side, as people who actually own the 45 out of 55 aircrafts that Go First operates, were not heard. The aircrafts belong to them essentially, not to Go First, and therefore they are an important stakeholder. They should have been properly heard, which did not happen, and so they took a legal recourse, which is to basically challenge the NCLT order in NCLAT. With NCLAT now asking them to go back to NCLT, it appears that the doors on getting a legal recourse from NCLT is officially closed.
Right.
So my understanding of this is the only way out for them is to perhaps go to Supreme Court, and that could be a very long drawn process. But all in all, and from legal point of view as well, because we got a lawyer about a week ago when we were discussing how lessors operate with aircrafts, how the leasing operations work. The idea here is that lessors in general, even though it's a temporary win for Go First is going to get some sort of relief, lessors will have less and less faith and trust, and that also means that going forward, aviation sector as a whole may find it difficult to get lessors to lease aircrafts to them. There could be more premium they have to pay, which could then be passed on to consumers.
That's right, risk premium.
Risk premium, and that essentially is not good news.
You're right, Shweta. So it is from a standpoint of faith and trust in the Indian ease of doing business fundamentals, trust in profitability and longevity of airlines operating within India or Indian carriers even operating outside of India. These are questions that I think at a macro level will have to be addressed by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. They will have to sort of recast that faith, reposition India as a good aviation market. But again, I think the lessors also should have taken cognizance of the state of affairs at Go First in time, and Go First of course was quick to move the court and sort of file for insolvency, but the lessors were also not really in any tearing hurry at that point to come to the court and make their case heard and make a solid motion against Go First's insolvency.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, overall it could add a risk premium. There is nothing stopping them from doing that. But at the same time, there will have to be fair market practices at play. The risk premium should not be restricted to one airline. It has to be market wide. But at a time when we've seen record order books by Air India, 450 plus aircraft being bought, there is, of course, a market leader, Indigo, by leaps and bounds with a large enough fleet and good sort of operations, smooth operations underway, and overall the yield on the aircraft leased coming back to the lessors on time. See, even in this case, the lessors should not complain much, because if Go First takes to the skies quicker, they start getting their yield on their leased aircraft as well.
I'm reading something very interesting, and essentially the idea that lessors were sitting ducks is also being questioned here, because and these are newspaper reports that between May 4th and May 9th, which is a day prior to Go First going to NCLT, lessors sought deregistration and repossession of the 45 of Go First's 55 aircraft. They also went to DGCA to allow them to repossess and fly out planes using their irrevocable deregistration and export request authorization, also called IDERA, which empowers lessors to get their aircrafts deregistered. However, that took time, and on 10th of May, Go First went to NCLT. So it's not as if they were sitting and ducks and they were not moving quickly. They did move, but it's just that they were a little too late, perhaps.
They were a little too late. That's right.
And I think they will have to pay up for that in the long run. But as you rightly pointed out, Go First taking to skies is good news even for lessors.
Even for the lessors.
And if Go First resumes its operations, and we're hoping it does, it will essentially mean that lessors will get their money back. And to what amount, to what degree, and in what sort of timeline, we don't know. But those are some very important developments coming in there, and has repercussions on the entire sector as a whole, aviation space, that we continue to watch out for. We're going to shift focus also to Jet Airways now, because Jet Airways is also expecting NCLAT to come up with its order by 30th of this month.
30th of this month, that's right. So, yeah, so let's see. I mean, 2019 is when Jet Airways got grounded. Of course, the issue there was not as much about faulty engines or old aircraft or lessors, but more about the financial situation that the airline found itself in. And of course, management has changed hands a couple of times. Professional CEOs have come, have gone, interim CEOs have come, have gone, joined other airline, and consulting groups in the aviation space. But yeah, overall, I think the aviation sector is likely to continue to be in news for some time, because even at SpiceJet, there are concerns about pilots' salaries not being paid in time, part salaries being paid, and a one-year notice period when pilots tender in their resignation, and this when salaries have not been paid to them. So it seems like, yeah, the aviation space in India is not a can of worms, but an aircraft full of worms, and with every landing and every grounding, there is this one hatch that opens and the worms just flood out on the runway.
This has become a Pandora's box, Karthik.
Totally.
You never know what's going to pop up next, right? Every month. So the NCLAT order may bring some relief for Jet Airways. That is the expectation from Jet's side. We don't know if that's going to happen, but of course 30th of May is a date to watch out for. Moving on to an interesting story coming in for gamers at this point in time. If you are active on a gaming platform and your net income is above 100 rupee, you can expect that to be taxed. And these are new taxation rules by CBDT. Interesting guidelines there, because essentially a sector that so far has been untouched by laws, regulations, not in the realm of regulations at all, suddenly finding noose tightening around it.
That's right, Shweta. And the sector has been in the news for multiple reasons, right? Of course, during cricket times, we have seen even IPL, which is ongoing right now, betting companies have come under scanner, and there is always this fairly well-defined line between luck-based gaming and skill-based gaming, right? And luck-based gaming has been seen more akin to gambling, which is illegal on the soils of India, whereas skill-based gaming is seen as more of esports and seen more akin with, let's say, an off-computer skill-based exercise that you undertake. So that comes under the broader gamut of sports rather than online games. But yeah, so whatever said and done, broadly, you know, the gaming industry, and also the third reason being that many of these gaming companies are run through intermediaries, not directly by the gaming company, which may be registered outside the shores of India, and then transactions, etc., have been murky. But broadly, yeah, I think the guidelines have come in fairly square this time around on the taxation front. So a lot of these games are actually played with real money and not just virtual money, right? So the guidelines have clearly stated that if your net winnings are in excess of 100 rupees a month, then there's got to be a TDS on that. Now, up until 31st of March this year, which is the last financial year, the cap was 10,000 rupees per annum and a tax rate of 30% on net winnings, right? Now, it has been reduced substantially. So, any amount that you make in net winnings in excess of 100 rupees needs to undergo the tax structure. Now, how does this entire industry work? Let's say you and I...
how does it work for CBDT to calculate taxes on the N number of transactions that will happen?
That's right. So, that is going to be complex, but see, as long as there is real money at play, there is an entry point and an exit point for that money, right? So, what happens if you and I are on a gaming platform, let's say competing against each other on a game, you end up winning 500 rupees of me, but the next time we play together, I end up winning 400 rupees of you. You are still a net winner, and your net income, presumably in a month, if you do this more often, is 100 rupees. So, these 100 rupees that you win from me is actually money I have paid to you. So, if I have paid you that money, that is added income for you. Even if that money that I have paid has gone from my already taxed salary, but it becomes added income in your case. Now, if you're playing a game with real money, there is some linkage with either a bank account or a financial wallet. So, if there is a wallet linked to the platform or the intermediary on which you're playing that game, that wallet to get, you know, infused with funds or for funds to exit will have an entry or exit point. So, at some point that money will be withdrawn and put into a bank account, right? Now, as soon as that withdrawal happens, and if it is in excess of 100 rupees a month, it is immediately subject to tax. If not, then by law, at the end of the financial year, even if you keep all the money in your wallet, stashed away from all entry exit points that I spoke about, at the end of the financial year, it is your job as a tax-paying gamer and a tax-paying citizen to submit that additional income in the financial year by way of your net winnings.
Okay. And it's interesting to note here, because what we are reading is that online gaming company is paying to any person any income by way of winnings during the financial year should deduct income tax on the net winnings. So it's going to be basically the owner's responsibility lies on gaming companies and the intermediary that operates for cash transaction per se, to be able to deduct TDS and pay that TDS to the authorities. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of this is that it is a way to formalize gaming as an industry.
Right.
Because when, you know, up until now, and this is akin to the money that we pay to, let's say, somebody who's working in our house as a house help to a driver, which essentially is not taxed, not at least on their end. And up until now, playing games on any platform wasn't taxed, because as you essentially pointed out, it's money coming from your wallet coming to me. But with this, gaming will now officially be a part of formal economy, formal
Absolutely
structure,
right.
and an attempt there, of course, being made by the government
Absolutely
to tax
right,
gaming. Interesting developments there coming in as far as gaming sector is concerned. Remember, a lot of developments, in fact, in gaming, from where the companies are situated to how much they locally keep your data, to now what sort of money you win, you lose on a gaming platform. All of that is now being formalized. Big developments there. But I think with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business Plus and News 9. Thanks very much for watching.